And now,
introducing the one, the only.
Let me introduce to you
lively talk with successful people, barely filtered. This is the Jenna Ben Show.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Jenna Ben Show, guys. I'm your host, Jenna Benamy, and with us today, we have number 8 UFC welterweight with a record of 28-10, a ton of accolades, including 2 UFC Fight of the Nights, 2 UFC Performance of the Nights, 4 UFC Submission of the Nights, and more that we're going to get into later in the show. Welcome, Demian Maia. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Jenna, for having me in your show.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, you have such a big name in Jiu Jitsu and in the UFC. And, you know, I've been like sort of monitoring your progress since I got involved in the sport, and your name has come up multiple times. So I'm like, I got to get this badass on the show. So I'm excited to hear your story.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about COVID in São Paulo right now. So you're in Brazil.
Yes.
That was a hot spot when I spoke to Johnny Walker. So talk to me about it now.
Yeah, it is very big right now here. We breaking records all the time about people dying and people getting COVID here. And right now we closed it. The academy is closed for 2 weeks. And it's going to be for sure 1 more week or 10 more days. And we hope to reopen again. And we hope also to the deaths go down. And the problem here in São Paulo is the intensive medical care, you know, the units of intensive medical care, they are kind of full. So that's why, we having more problems right now. But I hope we just in, you know, a peak of the second wave and that goes down soon.
Wow. I hope so too. That's crazy to hear. You know, here in the US, I'm in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles was a hot spot for the longest time. And then, you know, now the numbers are going down, probably because of the vaccinations or herd immunity. I don't know, but yeah, you know, I hope things clear up for you guys out there soon. Now, other than closing the gym, what changes have you had to make as a result of COVID?
I think it's mostly, you know, the gym, because the rest of the things that, you know, I still doing, and it's just bad for the workers, because we have professors here, you know, and coaches and everybody here, and we making an effort, you know, my partners and I, to keep paying everybody. And the students still, you know, paying the gym, the academy here at my school of Jiu Jitsu. But let's hope it's not going to be long, because, you know, if it's long, then everybody's going to suffer. And for me, you know, I don't live off my gym, but many people live off here. You know, we have like seven coaches and people working as in the reception, and people working in cleaning, everything. So I want to keep this business health.
That is so consistent with what I've learned about you as a person from doing my research for this interview. You seem to be sort of a gentle giant, you know, like you have a very kind soul, and we're going to get into that a little bit more as we tell your story. But okay, so tell me a little bit about São Paulo outside of COVID. Yeah, I like to hear, you know, when I talk to guests like Merab Dvalishvili, and I learn about the country of Georgia, he was able to paint a picture for me on what's so special and beautiful about it. So what's great about Brazil?
Yeah, you know, if you talk about São Paulo is a pretty strange city and different city, and normally people either love it or hate it. It's kind of like New York, you know, 20 million people and crazy and bunch of people. But there is a thing that is very interesting. If you go 20-25 minutes away from the city, depends which direction, you're going to be in the middle of the jungle.
Oh,
if you're going, like they found some jaguars, 30 minutes away from the city, from the downtown, and a couple months ago. So São Paulo grew in the 50s and 60s a lot. São Paulo was pretty much like a city of immigrants till the 60s, because everybody who came from Europe, like some people would go to the United States, some people to Brazil after the First and Second War. So we have a lot of immigration here, and it's very mixed. Until the 60s, they say São Paulo was like a European city, and all people from Europe and all other countries, and Japan too, a lot of Japanese people. The biggest Japanese colony in the world is in São Paulo.
Wow, okay.
But what I think is interesting, very interesting here about São Paulo that I don't see anywhere around the world, is that those people, they get into the culture and they start to mix with other cultures. So instead of, most places when you go, you see immigrants living in a part with just like Italian people, and the other part is just like Irish people, and the other part is just Japanese people. In Brazil, they mixed. And that's very, very interesting about Brazil. It's like, and black people, white people, European people, they all mix together. And I think that was very rich for the Brazilian culture. And in the 70s, because São Paulo became the most important economic capital of Brazil, a lot of people flew here and came here from inside Brazil, from the more poorest parts of Brazil, to work as a blue collar workers. Can I say that?
Yeah.
I don't know the right word. So it makes even more, and the city just exploded. And so the city has a lot of problems of big cities, especially because we are in South America, so all the violence problems, everything. But the mix of culture is beautiful, and I think the nature a little bit outside the city and the coast of São Paulo is so beautiful. It's something that I really miss, because I grew up in the city, in the middle of the city, but every weekend my grandpa, he had a little ranch outside São Paulo, and I would go there every weekend and be in the middle of nowhere and the middle of the jungle. So I grew up with both worlds, and I, I'm very much love both.
I know that soccer is popular in Brazil. Did you play soccer growing up?
Yes, a lot. Like every Brazilian kid, in one point of my youth, I wanted to be a soccer player, and I used to play in the school a lot. I used to play at the street and in the streets. So I really loved soccer till 18 years old. And then after 18 years old, I was too much into martial arts, and I kind of didn't care anymore. And the funny thing is, the late couple years or 3 years, my kid, Lorenzo, who is just turned 8 years old, he became passionate about soccer. So after many years, maybe 15 years, that I didn't go to the stadium to watch a game, I took him to the game, and I went like 3 times, and was fun, because I remember going with my father to watch the games of São Paulo, my team. And now, doing this with him was very interesting.
That's nice. Now you've created tradition, and hopefully he'll continue it with his kids.
Yeah. And there's a problem here, because soccer is a big deal. So my wife, she cheers to Corinthians, and all his family to Corinthians Football Club, and I'm São Paulo Futebol Club. But I was able to influence my kid to be in São Paulo.
Oh my God, Family Feud. I love it. Yeah. All right, let's dig into your story. Now, here on the Jenna Ben Show, we talk about my guests' personal and professional story. So we're going to dig a little bit into your childhood and then what got you into MMA and BJJ, and then, your time in the UFC and your gym. And I'm going to go over your millions of awards and accolades that you have and what's next for you. So let's start by going way back to when you were a kid. You're 43 years old now, but what were you like when you were a boy? Like your personality, were you shy? Were you outgoing, active?
Yeah, I think I was, I always love sports. So I was playing everything, running, doing everything to try to, use my body and spend energy. So I always loved that. I was shy at first when I meet somebody, but with my friends I wasn't at all. I always had a lot of friends, and I still with some friends, and nowadays that is still my friend that I became friend with them when they were like 9 years old or 10 years old. They still my friends. So within my friends, I always I'm not shy at all. My mother, I remember she put me, because my brother and I, she said we had a lot of energy, and she was single mother. They divorced. She divorced from my father early when I was 6 or 7. So she took me to do judo when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I did for a couple years. I think I remember doing one competition. So I don't remember, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. But in one point I wasn't doing it anymore. I don't remember if I wanted to stop. She said to me to stop. She couldn't take me anymore there. I don't remember why. I just remember judo for me was interesting, but was not, oh, I love that. It was just something that I would go and train. And I remember I would train judo, and after that go to the swimming. So I was doing judo and swimming, twice a week. And so I stopped it, and when I was like 10 years old, one of my friends, or 9 years old, one of my friends, his uncle was like a karate black belt or something like that. And we start to play in his house, like, okay, if I get a knife and, point at you, how are you gonna do? And we're doing all this crazy stuff, like kicks to the knives and this kind of thing, learning some self-defense from small books. And his uncle was showing some stuff to him. And then I started to get interested in martial arts. And when I was 11 years old, in our 5th grade, a friend of mine came to my school, and he became later my best friend. He was coming from 5 years living in the United States, because his mother was in Indiana, in Bloomington, Indiana, to do like her postdoc or something. She's a musician. And so he came back, and when he was living in Indiana, he trained taekwondo for many years. He moved when he was like 7 years old or 6 years old. And he came, and he was already a black belt, like how some academies of taekwondo, they give black belts to the kids with 11 years old or something. Yeah. So for me that was crazy, because I said, man, how this kid is a black belt? And he became my friend, and I really want to train. I said, man, now I want to train. I was really interested in I cannot say just in martial arts, but in self-defense. I don't know, when we grow up in Brazil, there was always this thing that when you go outside, something can happen, especially when you're a kid, somebody can try to steal something of you. And there was too many, nowadays not too many, I think, like used to be, at least in São Paulo, street fights and this kind of thing. So I was very interested in know how to defend myself. And plus, was a sport too, so I would move, I would learn how to defend myself. Everything was, perfect to me. So I decided to start to train.
Okay, interesting. People always ask me if I train, if I do anything, and I just started maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
But not jujitsu. I want to, but jujitsu takes so long. Like best case scenario, if you really study hard at it, 4 or 5 years, maybe, you'll get your black belt. And I'm a little impatient. So my buddy, Anthony Gonzalez, is a striking coach. And he trains Jalen Turner, and he worked with Tony Ferguson for like most of his career. And so I've been driving out to Orange County, which is like an hour each way, and my knuckles are like not pretty anymore, but I understand. I'm starting to like develop a love for it, and I understand, like, as you speak, it's helping me kind of understand you guys a little bit better in terms of like, you know, the passion and the drive and the dedication and like the exhaustion that your body experiences, you know, after a workout, and how much like time really goes into the sport and your career.
Yeah, and you know, you said you're training kickboxing, right?
No, just boxing.
Just boxing, okay.
Yeah.
There's no belts in boxing, so you don't have reason to worry about belts in jiu-jitsu, because, you know, even if the black belt takes 10 years, it doesn't matter, because what matters is the knowledge that you're gonna have. So doesn't need to be a black belt to know a lot in jiu-jitsu. So
that's fair.
I think, you know, in jiu-jitsu, the good thing is I say to everybody that I know, in one, you know, in like maybe 10 classes, you're going to be able to defend against most common attacks of probably 90% of the people or 95% of the people, especially if they're not much more stronger and athletic than you. But I think jiu-jitsu, even for women, is very important. My little girl, Pietra, I want, you know, she trains, and I want her to keep training, because I think it's the only martial art that you really can defeat a male, you know, a man. And I saw that you can defeat a woman can defeat a man, because normally if you're doing most martial arts, they're very efficient, but it's hard when the power, you know, when the strength is in the game. But I saw so many women defeat men in jiu-jitsu that, you know, is something that really, and not just women, but, you know, small guys defeating guys twice their size that are really in love with that. That's why I think it's so important to train jiu-jitsu as a self-defense, and I'm very excited about that. I always say to everybody. So I think you shouldn't worry about your, you know, the belt. You just go and train it.
Yeah.
Especially because the area that you live is special, you know. A lot of old champions moved to California from Brazil. I have so many friends living there. Actually, I have an affiliate. Yeah, I have an affiliate academy, Villains Jiu-Jitsu, in LA. It's closed right now, but I don't know if reopened, but it's in LA. So, you know, I have my student Nathan there, and yeah, you have a lot of good people around you.
Well, maybe I'll get the referral from you. I think I was just intimidated by the fact that it takes so long to be the best, because it's not fun if you're not like.
But it doesn't mean you're the best when you get the black belt, and doesn't mean you're not the best when you're not black belt. The belt doesn't mean that much, and I think it's much more special when you get a black belt in jiu-jitsu, because you know how hard you work it. And that's why when I give black belts in here in my academy, I saw people crying so often, man, woman, everybody, because it's a hard work. And I think the price is high, but the reward is higher too.
Yeah. I mean, how did you evolve into MMA? I'm wondering how this kind of developed into your career.
Yeah. So David, my friend, he always loved Taekwondo, and he later became the first Brazilian to be world champion in ITF, International Taekwondo Federation, world champion when he was 19 years old. And then he won again with 21, and he won again with 23. He won like 4 times. But I always love more the self-defense side than the sports side of the thing. So first I go to find a Taekwondo academy, because for me it was very appealing, all the movies, everybody kicking and doing flying stuff. For me that was very appealing, like I said, and for me was very effective too, because you could fly and kick the guy and this kind of thing. And then my mother, I start to bother my mother that I want to train, but my mother was in very bad financial situation that time. So we go to academy in Liberdade neighborhood here. Liberdade means freedom, is the neighborhood of the Oriental people, like Japanese, Chinese, Korean people. And everything is, it's like Chinatown in New York or in San Francisco. But so we go there, and there was a Taekwondo academy, and I start to training, and my mother pays for, like, how they used to do, you give like 12 checks for, all the year, and they discount one each month. So when they discount the first one, she realized she couldn't, keep paying, and she asked the guy to give back her checks, and she took me out. I was kind of sad. Then I found another friend who was training Kung Fu and Chinese Kung Fu, and I asked him how much was the cost, and it was cheaper, was like half of the price. I said, okay, let's go there. And then I started to train with my friend with 12 years old, and I never stopped anymore, training since 12 years old. So it's been like 31 years, will be this year. And like I said, I was more interested in self-defense, so I was always looking for efficient, which is more efficient, which are martial arts more efficient, this kind of thing. And I remember there was one day they announced here in São Paulo they were going to have a Vale Tudo fight, which is like the modern MMA, but it's with much less rules. They call Vale Tudo, or United States they call NHB at first, holds barred, yeah. So it was the Vale Tudo, the when everything started, and what was going to have a challenge in São Paulo, my city, in Ibirapuera, a venue here, that was going to fight Renzo Gracie, and he was, maybe 20 something years old. Half Gracie, his brother, who lives in the West Coast right now, and Marcelo Bering, another fighter who was the Rickson Gracie best student, but he's a red diet. And they came to fight against some Kung Fu and kickboxing guys. And I went to watch. That was my first experience watching a real fight. And for us that was new. That I'm talking about 1991 or 92. So 30 years ago or wow. 29 years ago, yeah. So as a kid, I go there and I watch, and the jiu-jitsu guys, they won all the fights. And I was pretty amazed because I was, man, how these guys, they just hugging and they winning. and because, in Rio de Janeiro, the other city, Jiu-Jitsu was pretty strong, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but in São Paulo, like I said, is the biggest Japanese colony in the world. So we had a lot of judo here. So instead of kids, all the Brazilian kids, the kids from São Paulo, they used to do judo when they were kids. And judo is more sport-oriented than fight-oriented or self-defense oriented like Jiu-Jitsu. So I was very impressed with that, and I said, man, maybe I want to train that. But then, I was afraid to tell. At that time, it was different. You cannot say to your coach, there was big rivalry between martial arts, like there was, you cannot train in one place and go to another place. Yeah, because they don't let you do that. And was pretty big, this. And so I was afraid to say, so I wait. And when I finally decided, okay, I want to train, it was too expensive. So I said, man, I need to start to do something to get money to do. So it took a while for me to start in Jiu-Jitsu. But there was a point that I said, okay, now I'm going to train Jiu-Jitsu. There was no way I'm gonna avoid that anymore. Is when I just turned 18 years old, I was walking through a street nearby the academy I was training Kung Fu, and I saw a sign saying, okay, a championship in a couple months. The championship will be full contact, semi-contact, light contact, and they call the other one free contact. So there was like light, semi, full contact, and free contact. And I went up and asked, what is the free contact? And the guy said, no, it's like Vale Tudo. And
No
so
rules.
it's like MMA. Yeah, no. I said, okay, can I sign in? He said, yeah, just pay $30 here and you can sign in for the fight. I said, how is going to be that? It's going to be a championship like it used to be. He said, no, this one, there's not too many people signing for that, so it will be just one fight. And we'll be near São Paulo, in the coast of São Paulo. So I came back to my Kung Fu teacher and said, okay, I want to fight there. He said, okay, get a signing for your father, because I just turned 18 and they were kind of, everybody was worrying. Yeah. And so I was training. The day comes, I go there, I go to the coast of São Paulo, and I go fight with this guy here, and it was a mat, and it was an open mat with no ropes around, no cage, no nothing, just an open mat, like a jiu-jitsu mat.
Okay.
And so the fight started, and there was like maybe 3 weeks, a month before that, I come to some friends who used to train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and I said, look, I'm gonna fight this Vale Tudo fight, and can you show me some Jiu Jitsu stuff just in case I need the fight goes to the ground? And then they said, yeah, sure. And then they showed me what was a Baiana takedown and a body lock takedown. And on the ground, they showed me what was a mount position. And they showed me also, if I fall on my back, that I could do a triangle choke, or I can do a arm bar, just like very basic stuff. And I did a couple classes like that with my friends in their living room, in their apartment. And I said, do this and do that. They were showing me and rolling around a little bit. And I said, man, that's very cool. Then I go to this fight. The fight starts. We start to exchange punches. And if you want to actually see this fight, you can see in Brazil, they did a documentary about me for Combate, and it's ufcdocs.com.br. And if you go to Nascidos, which is born para o combate, born to fight, the second season, they have the 1 hour documentary of my life, and they show this fight. Nice. In the ufcdocs.com.br. So anyways, I go there and we start to exchange punches, and he caught me with a punch to my chin, and I fall back outside of the mat. And then he rushing to kick my head. I just jump back and I avoid the kick, and then the referee stops because we are outside we are in the concrete already. So he stops the fight and come back, stand up in the middle of the mat. And then when he goes punch me again, we kind of engage naturally. I didn't try any takedown, and I hug him, I body lock him. And without thinking about, I just put a hook on his leg, fall mount, open my arm to keep the base, start to punch. He turns, I keep punching. And just before I go to the Mata-Leão, to the rear naked choke, his coach throws the towel, and then I win the fight. And once I win the fight, that's totally blown my mind, because in that point, that was 1996. So I was training Kung Fu for like 6 years. I did 2 classes with those friends of mine in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And when I coming back in the car with my coach, and David, this friend of mine, he was the guy recording the fight. He went there to record. And I remember, I was quiet. We are talking about the fight. Oh, it was great. He win, blah, blah, blah. And then for a while I was quiet. I was thinking, man, I've been training 6 years Kung Fu, and I train 2 times Jiu-Jitsu. And when I go to a fight or a real situation, what I use is the Jiu-Jitsu. This is so amazing for me. This is so crazy. I need to train that. And I remember right after that, like couple months after that, even before I started Jiu-Jitsu, I was playing soccer in a place in a neighborhood that is not so good here in São Paulo, and a boy came to me about my age, and he started to pick up a fight with me, and we are playing, and he started to pick up a fight. So when he comes into me, like maybe try to push me or something and come close, I did the same thing. I body lock him, I take him down, I mount on him, but I didn't punch him like I did in the fight. I said, okay, you want to keep doing? And then I remember he said, well, what are you going to do? You're going to kill me? I said, no, but if you don't stop, I'm going to beat you. And then his brother came and said, okay, he's not going to do nothing anymore, and break the fight, and the kid stopped. And so I said, man, again, this thing is so impressive, because we know what was impressive for not just the efficiency, but to be able to control somebody without hurt him, without throw any punch.
Yeah,
that was amazing for me, because the first fight, I won because I was so efficient. The second fight in the streets, I won, but I didn't hurt the opponent. I didn't get hurt. So for me, that was, the point that I said, okay, I'm gonna take what it needs. I'm gonna train that for sure. And then I start training jiu-jitsu. That was it.
I read you were quoted as saying, my favorite technique is to submit my opponent without hurting him, or without him hurting me or me hurting him. And I love that. I think there's like so much fear associated when you fight, like it's scary, right? So like your agenda is to just take out the other person by any means necessary. Yeah. But for you, you're not trying to do that. Your hope is to win without anybody walking away with any damage. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, of course, I'm an athlete, and I'm going to do everything that I can to win because I'm an athlete.
Right.
But I think the beautiful thing, and if you think about mission, the beautiful thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that you can do that even if you don't want, even if you think, I'm going to kill this guy, most likely you're going there. If the technique works, you're not going to hurt your opponent. So as an athlete, I want to win, but the technique is so perfect in that sense that you don't need to hurt the opponent. That many of my fights, most of my fights, I didn't get any scratch, and neither my opponent. So that was that for me is priceless, and that's something that I remember back in 2017 when I did 7 wins in a row in the UFC just before get the fight for the title in the welterweight. I was in LA, and Rickson Gracie he was giving trophies to the people of Brazilian community, like the one that was like the fighter of the year in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, male, female, the coach of the year, this kind of thing. It was like awards, and he gave to me the awards of the representative of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in MMA nowadays, and that was very special for me. And what I said that day is something that is even right here in my academy, that when I started to train in Jiu-Jitsu, I want to train in Jiu-Jitsu because I want to win MMA fights and be in MMA and be tested in the hardest martial art field that you can, ever go, that is a MMA fight. So for me, MMA was the end, but Jiu-Jitsu was just the way to do that, but MMA was the end. And once time goes by, and I see how much people was influenced to training and change their lives, and see many people come to the academy, I realized that nowadays for me is totally the opposite. The MMA was just a way to do and to talk about Jiu-Jitsu, and Jiu-Jitsu is the end.
Yeah. God, you are such a badass that Frank Mir hired you back in the day for UFC 100 against his fight against Brock Lesnar as his head jiu-jitsu coach. And he said, I thought I was actually good at it until I started rolling with him talking about you. That's pretty cool. So have any other big names? I'm sure you've been in the sport forever and you've accomplished so much. So like, What are some big names out there that have reached out to you to help with their jiu-jitsu game?
Yeah, I trained with pretty much, everybody, at least here in Brazil. But even, like I said, Frank was a very nice guy, and he's pretty tough in jiu-jitsu. He's so good, and actually, we had the same manager when he was doing the Ultimate Fighter in 2008. I was just getting into the UFC. I had like a couple fights, and I went to help as assistant coach to his Ultimate Fighter, and then we training, and it was very nice. He's a nice guy. He has a good jiu-jitsu. He's so strong, and his technique is good too. But I remember, I spent some time in Vegas. That time I trained with a lot of people. I trained with Silva, and here in Brazil, when I came back, when I was training more in Brazil, I trained with Junior dos Santos. I trained with Rodrigo and Rogério Nogueira a lot. I trained with Vitor Belfort back in the day when I was a jiu-jitsu fighter. He asked me to help him with the ground game, be a sparring partner. And one day, even with Anderson Silva, when he came to train with Vitor too, this is back in 2003 or 2002.
Before you guys fought?
Like 8 years before. I was even fighting MMA too much. I was more into jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I was just starting training.
So that's really cool. Now, bringing up Anderson, I was going to ask you this later, but walk me through what happened with your fight with him. I mean, Dana ended up walking off, being pissed, being like, really unhappy with Anderson's performance. What happened during that fight?
We had some jokes before the fight, let's say like that, because when I remember I wanted really to fight him, and then I said after win my fourth fight, I think, in the UFC, I won 5 in a row, but that was against Nate Quarry in Vegas, and I said I want to fight with Anderson, and if he's the spider, I hope I'm gonna take one leg to my house, something like that, doing some jokes. Yeah. But I was laughing, it was nothing like aggressive, but he didn't like that, so he didn't say nothing. But when we start to fight, he started to, I think he was pretty worried about going to the ground. So once he realized he dominated well the distance, and I didn't rush in too much, because I knew how good he was in counter-attacking. He started provoking me, saying things and this kind of thing, because I think was his strategy to make me get angry and rush into him. And because he doesn't want to expose himself attacking me too much, and he could, go more forward trying to knock me out, but I think he was afraid to give me the chance to put him down. So he was kind of trying to play more safe, and because he feel more comfortable counter attacking, he was provoking with words to try to make me go forward and lose my mind. But I keep my mind, and in one point in the middle of the third round, I remember to hit him. I said, okay, that's it, I'm not gonna win this one, so I need to do wherever I can do. So I remember to fake a shot and punch him to the face, and a really hard punch. They said, oh my God, this really land. And I'm kidding, sometimes I kid with my friends that if was today, he doesn't have that chin anymore, that chin that he had in that time. He would, in that time he was taking a lot of damage, and he couldn't, he just stayed stand up because he was pretty tough. But I remember to hit him and feel that he felt, and run into him and try even throw knees and crazy stuff instead of just trying to take him down. It was crazy. And then he recovered, and I took him I got him one more time. And then I remember the fight started to change a little bit. He started to more like running away. But that was it. He knew he won the fight, so he was more like
playing
running
it safe.
Away.
Yeah.
Yes, and he was afraid of being took down. So yeah.
Did you guys talk after the fight, or like ever since? Have you guys talked? Because it got a little weird.
Yeah, just hi and bye, this kind of things.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so you've fought a few guys that I've had on the show, Tyron Woodley, Carlos Condit, and Neil Magny. And you beat Carlos Condit and Neil Magny, but you lost to Woodley. So of those three guys, who would you say was the most worthy opponent, regardless of winning or losing?
What do you mean worthy?
Worthy, like who would you say is the toughest out of the three of them?
I think, of course, the three of the guys that you said, they are pretty tough. But, Magny, he proved that he won a lot of, really tough guys.
Yeah.
And Condit, was a former interim champion, so he's pretty tough too. He did a great fight with George St. Pierre back in the day.
Yeah.
But for me, it was Woodley because of his game. I think his game was his style was tough for me because he's very short, strong, and he came just to defend the takedowns. And so I think that's why, the styles, like people say, styles make fights. And that's why for me it was the toughest one.
Okay. He has a fight coming up. He's lost his last few. Any projections on the evolution of his career or like where he's going?
I don't know. I think he's pretty tough, but I don't know about the fire. If he's still with the same fire, he's still wanting to training and to fight like before. So if he's still, I think he can recover from that losses and win again, because he's the former champion. He was with the belt for a long time. He was
5 times, yeah.
Yeah, he has a really heavy hand. He's so strong for the weight division, and I think he lost to tough guys also, and so I think he can come back, but depends how much he wants that.
Yeah. Okay. You are a 4th degree Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt. Looking at your record of 28-10, most of your wins are by submission, of course. But conversely, you've never been submitted. So what do you think about that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't think too much about that. I think it's because, even in Jiu-Jitsu too, I till the brown belt, I never get submitted. I think I have a good defensive game too. So the first time, I've been submitted 3 times in my life in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Wow.
One as a brown belt. I lost to a guy that I beat previously like 3 times, and I think I was a brown belt, young, and I think I maybe came into that fight saying, okay, one more fight, I'm gonna win again, and then I got surprised. And as a black belt, I got submitted 2 times for one guy that I won 2 times. He's world champion multiple times and ADC champion, Romulo Barral, but then he submitted me in our 3rd fight, and he's a great fighter, and also I got submitted to Alexandre Ribeiro, who lives in San Diego, and actually Romulo, he lives there in Orange County nowadays, and Alexandre Ribeiro, he's my big friend. He submitted me in absolute division because he's heavier than me, and that was the first time as a black belt. So it was the only times. I think Jiu-Jitsu is pretty much a defensive fight, and I think I really embraced that, to learn how to defend yourself before attacking. And I think that's the goal of, like, the Grandmaster Helio Gracie would say, is like, if you keep fighting and you don't get knocked out or you don't get submitted, you're gonna in some point you're gonna find a way to submit your opponent, and that's what my mindset. Even in MMA, like, I lost 2 fights. The only 2 fights, the only time in my career I lost before the time limit, was early in my career, and the last fight. And I think that was because the first one was a big mistake. I ran into the guy trying to kick your knee, so I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu. And the last fight, I was jabbing and maybe a little bit too much relaxed, but all the other fights, even that I lost, I knew that if the fight could come in, could keep going, I would have a chance to win. So I think that's is the essence of jiu-jitsu. You have a very good defense, and at one point you're gonna find a way to get a submission. But of course, we fight in a sport that there's time and there is referee standing up the fight, and you cannot just pull guard and wait and sit down. You need to go forward because the sport needs to be excited. So that's it.
Do you keep track of your accomplishments?
A little bit. I right now, I'm in the second. The biggest ones for me was I'm the second with most wins in the UFC, behind Cowboy Cerrone, and I'm in the first Brazilian with most wins in the UFC. So for me, that's the nicest records right now.
Well, I have a lot more for you. A lot more. I mean, I'm thinking like, I don't know, like 10 or something. Okay. So you listed one of them. Now you are number 5, just behind Jeremy Stevens for total fights in the UFC at 32. Number 8, tied with Matt Hughes, Dustin Poirier, Glover Teixeira, and Derek Lewis for UFC finishes, 12. Number 2, just behind Charles Oliveira for UFC submission wins, 11. At number 8, tied with John Fitch, Mike Bisping, Gray Maynard, Clay Guida, John Jones, and Derek Elkins for UFC decision wins, 10 of those. Number 4, just behind Diego Sanchez for UFC total fight time. This is insane. 6 hours, 34 minutes, and 40 seconds. I mean, oh my God.
I got some experience.
Just a little.
How much is this? 6 hours then?
6 hours, 34 minutes, and 40 seconds.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so you're number 2 behind GSP for UFC control time at 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 6 seconds. Number 2 behind GSP again for UFC top position time at 2 hours and 53 seconds. You're number 7 just behind Nick Lentz for UFC takedowns landed, 67. Number 5 just behind Joe Lauzon for UFC submission attempts, 27. I mean, Jesus, that's like, I can honestly say, and I've had some really big names on the show. I think Francis Ngannou probably is like the next person to have as many accolades as you, but wow, you were in the record book a ton. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's nice. I didn't know all this thing, but the interesting for me and something that is very nice for me is to know that I've been inside the octagon for more than 6.5 hours. For me, that's important because this is experience, and that's something that nobody can take off me, and it's something that I can bring into my life and to my training, and training my the guys in the academy in the future, and they develop my methods, to training, because I've been there so much.
How much of the sport would you say is psychological? Like, what's the formula between knowledge and skill, and then good health and cardio, and then mental strength?
It's hard to say in percentage, but I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot, because I think more than half of the thing, because I saw so many very good and amazing athletes come to the gym and training, and once they go to the championship or to the match, they not perform. They can't perform because they are so afraid of lose that they freeze, and that's something I think to do with their ego. They are so much afraid of what people are gonna think about me if I lose. And I think that is something that really you need to work in your mind if you wanna get over that. And what I always say is, people came to me and said, "Man, somebody's so competitive that is very good." And I said, "Look, it's good to be very competitive, but if the people is over competitive, is I don't think it's so good, because I saw some students of the gym many years ago. One of the really marks me and reminds me is one guy that he never lost, and then he got his blue belt and he never lost. And once he lost for the first time, he was so competitive that he cannot deal with that, and he never more compete. And he could be a great athlete. So what I think is, people should be competitive, but you need to really learn to deal with failure, and because life is not going to be always a success. And actually, I think people don't see that, but throughout life we have more failures than success, and during your everyday life. So I think the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu, people come here to training at my gym, and they learn better to deal with that. They might never really learn, because it's pretty tough because of their background and what they pass through their life. But I'm sure they, if they put some effort, they will get better on that, because you get, in a training, and you go through struggling and every day. If you keep going, you're gonna learn to deal with the failures, and with the, how can I say, the frustration.
How do you
Better.
process your losses? Like
It's
the roller coaster,
Yeah.
right? And so you're not just dealing with the pressure that you put on yourself, but of course it's your corner, it's your family, it's the fact that you only made half your paycheck, and then it's the media coming down on you, plus social media. All these people have access to you. So I mean, it's a lot, and it's really hard to escape. And you've been in the game long enough to where you weren't in the line of fire as much coming up, because of social media didn't exist. But now,
Yes.
it's harder than ever. So
Yeah.
how do you deal with it?
I think it's something that you really need to learn, and I was lucky that I learned step by step, and not just, let's say, somebody who just got in the UFC. And let's say my friend Junior dos Santos Cigano, he was from nothing as an athlete to a world champion in like 5 years. Nothing, I mean, he was already good, but nobody knew him 5 years before he got the world title. And then he got the world. It's too fast. And for me, I was lucky, because I was already kind of famous in the jiu-jitsu world when I got in the UFC, because I was ADC champion, world champion, Pan American champion, these kind of things. So, I start step by step. I start first winning the local here championships, and people start to know me, and I start to deal a little bit with small media, specialized media. Then I start to deal with bigger media when I was a black belt, a little bit bigger, but still specialized. Then was even more interesting, because when I go to US to fight in the UFC in 2007, I start the first years till 2011. UFC was not big in Brazil. The first like couple of years, because UFC was something that was happening in the United States. We had the Vale Tudo fights here, the MMA fights, but the UFC was not here for a long time. UFC came to Brazil once in '98 under other organization, not under Zulfa. And UFC just came back to Brazil in 2011. So till 2000, my first couple of years, I became more famous to the people, the hardcore fans, but not everybody. And then suddenly the TV started to show in Brazil, like in broadcasting the UFC fights for free, this kind of. Then was crazy. But I was ready. I was ready for that. That was crazy. That was walking the street, and the bus driver stopped to talk to me. The guy who delivery food stopped to talk to me, and I go to the mall, and people start. That start back in 2010, 10, something like 9, 10, and then 11 really explodes, and the UFC came back to Brazil, and Globo, the biggest broadcasting TV, bought the rights, and we start to go to big shows, and then we go to shows. People in the United States, they might not understand, but if you're like a UFC really big champion in the United States, you go to things like, you know, the late night shows and these kind of things, right?
Yeah.
But here in Brazil, all the fighters, including me, we are going to all late night shows, all the famous comedy, you know, shows here, all the famous new shows, and not it was not just inside our niche for those, you know, from probably 2011 till a year ago when, you know, the pandemic started, but and the UFC kind of had some problem to redo the contract with Global. But we are doing so much thing at Global that we're so big, it's like Fox or ABC or NBC or CNA in the United States, and that we go all the big medias in Brazil. We go like, let's say, a newspaper like New York Times, like Folha de São Paulo here, Estado de São Paulo. We go, so it really became crazy. But I was, like I said, I was ready, you know, to go to all these talk shows and became famous, not between like the fighter and hardcore fans, but everybody that don't even train. And I start learn how to deal with that for all these years. I had time to learn that, but the most important, I think, about the social media, which is like a recent phenomenon, is I don't care too much, you know, about social media. People are very nice to me in social media, but let's say if I don't wanna, I know if we go read something, let's say about COVID now, if you know, the news are crazy, it's just, you know, they want the click, right. You know, clicks. So they put the worst news. So I have some friends, they keep watching that and looking for that, and they start to get depressed because it's stronger than you, is in your subconscious. You cannot fight that, even if you think you can. So I just don't look. So if I know something is you know, is bad, and let's say I know people are talking bad things about me, that never really happened, but then I just don't look. I think it's, you know, I'm not so attached to social media. That's my gym here.
Wow, so nice.
Yeah, there's an expo here.
I wanted to ask you, so there's like a museum?
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
and
it's
so
an expo. Yeah, look.
Is it tracking sort of like the evolution of your career or jiu-jitsu in general?
Jiu-jitsu in general.
Okay. That's very cool.
If
I ever make it to São Paulo, I'm gonna come visit you.
It's like a line, but with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, not just the fighters, but the culture, the influential culture, and some names here. It's nice.
It looks like it's a big space.
Upstairs we have 2 more mats. This one here is the small one, and then the coaches are training because the academy is closed. Okay.
Who is your toughest opponent yet?
I think Anderson was the toughest one.
Anderson, okay.
Was pretty tough, yeah.
Okay, and then fight you're most proud of?
I think Ben Askren, because of the, you know, all the deal with who was the best grappler into MMA, this kind of thing, and all the and to win a guy like Ben, you know, that is a great fighter and a great wrestler and somebody that I really admire, so was great.
What do you think of him and Jake Paul? Who do you think's got that one?
You know, somebody asked me that, but I really don't have an answer for that. I think, you know, I don't know. Ben is like an athlete. At least he used to be. I don't know how much he's training right now. And the other guy is a boxer. Even he's an amateur, is a boxing. So it's not gonna be easy for Ben. But Ben is, a Olympic athlete, is an athlete. So who knows? Depends. I think if you talk about stamina and experience, for sure, Ben has much more experience and much more uh, understanding of the competition game and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the other guy, if he has a good ability in boxing, Ben is not going to be able to use his grappling skills, so it might be hard.
Right. Okay. Now, what fight would you do over again if you could?
Anderson.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. How many fights do you have left in your current contract with the UFC?
One fight.
One. And do you have an opponent lined up?
No, not yet. We've been talking and for a long time, and I almost closed the deal, but something happened, and actually Eduardo, my manager, who is taking care of that. So yeah, let's hope. I'm training. Let's hope soon I'm gonna be back, and maybe for the last one, maybe if maybe I want one more if they want to, because I was thinking about finishing the career without crowd is kind of anti-climax, it's kind of not so nice, but it is what it is. Let's see what's gonna happen.
Wow. Okay. So you think you're towards the end. So then what are you going to do with your time? Just continue teaching and that's it? Or do you have other interests?
We just opened this school here. It's very beautiful. So it's something that I like it. I'm pretending to release soon some instructionals soon. So it's something that I want to do more, like pass my experience ahead.
Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu to MMA, and seminars. When the world's come back to normal, I always have so many seminars to give, and that I cannot even do all. But I will have time to travel more and go around, because I'm not gonna be just waiting and training for a fight. So this will be nice. And I did some TV stuff in Brazil that I like it very much. I did a documentary, not just the one that I talk about me, but one as a journalist that I went traveling to Egypt and Greece to find out the world fights and this kind of thing. That was very, very cool to do in 2017 and 2018 for the Brazilian TV. So maybe something with the TV also.
Yeah, you can use your degree in journalism, which I didn't even get to ask you about, but that's so cool. Yeah. I mean, it's like throughout your career, you've had all this success with jiu-jitsu, but you actually went and got a college degree in journalism.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm just curious, real quick, before I let you go, why journalism of all things?
Because, I always like to read and write. So I remember a teacher in the school said, why you don't go to journalism? I was thinking about veterinarian to be a veterinarian. Me because too. I like, animals and this kind of things. And then I did, the test for veterinarian, for journalism, and I passed in the journalism. I said, okay, let's do that. And that was nice. I still have some, a lot of friends from the college. They're still my friends.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to invite you back on and talk more about animals and your passions. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Demian Maia. Give us your Instagram handle so people know how to find you.
It's at Demian, Demian Maia, Maia. Go there and check, the Villains Academy, the Villains Jiu Jitsu in LA. And if you ever come to Brazil, come to my school. And guys, if you wanna go to Brazil, come to my school to see. It's beautiful, the expo. If in US, I have my affiliates there in Chicago, in Massachusetts, in LA, in Miami. And there is also in Napa Valley, my friend Jess. My student Jess in Napa Valley. I almost forget Napa Valley. It's so beautiful place. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you for coming on, Demian Maia. Real quick, guys, you can find me at the Jenna Ben Show on Instagram and on YouTube.